All right, I am live at the Red House with Josh Shelton, the
Yo.
man who goes by many names online. What have you been doing for the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 years since I've seen you?
2 or 3 years. So I'll start with the present because that's easier for me to wrap my head around. So I'm an optician at See Distinctive Eyewear. I got my national certification last December. So I've been there. I've come and gone. They've been kind enough to leave the doggy door open for me. So I've come and gone a few times, but I started there in 2017. And this run, I've been there contiguously for about a year and a half. So I help people see good and look good, and help people present the image that they want to the world. So that's kind of my livelihood. And in the midst of that, I've always had music going. And of course, since 2020, beginning of 2020, I was doing music full time. And of course, full-time musician is a musician code for don't have a job. It's once you quit your job, you're a full-time musician.
Right.
So, but I was doing, some solo stuff and some teaching, but mostly working with Casey Noel, who's doing fantastically well right now, which I'm really, really stoked for. That was, we were getting busier, several shows a month, and then we had just been booked for the Rising Star stage at Floyd Fest, and really stoked about that. And then, I was obviously disappointed. And there was also a part of me that was a little bit relieved because I had taken the jump into full-time musicianship, like without a net, like not prepared at all. And it was just a very vulnerable situation for me because I was barely working enough to get by, and that was going to change. But it was just, I'm a creature comfort person. And so even though I love the idea of being nothing but creative and only doing creative work all the time and all that stuff, reality is I kind of need a cage to go to every day. And then, they let me out at nighttime, and then I can do my thing. And that made me feel more stable. So
Yeah.
anyway, I'm all over the place, but that was at least the last year. Before that, I was doing CI wear and also always doing music stuff online, never performing all that much, but, doing some solo shows and doing a lot of educational stuff online. And then, the gigs with Casey, I was also and continue to be a part of Watchtower DMB, North Carolina's only Dave Matthews cover band, tribute band. That's Josh Moyer. That's his baby. And he's kept me involved in that, doing group shows now and again, whenever there's a venue that can actually afford to pay 7 grown men, which is not frequently. And so then the beauty of that project is you've got, it can be, and as long as it's Dave material, any iteration of it works. So it can be a 7-piece band, or it can be him doing a solo show, or it can be him and me doing the Dave and Tim thing. So I've done a lot of that too. So that's the music part. Outside of music, I make my living selling glasses, and that's the short story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. There's a lot of things a lot of threads we could follow there.
Yeah.
First off, are you, gigs are picking back up. Are you playing with Casey anymore?
No. So I'm not playing with really anybody other than the occasional Watchtower gig. I was pretty all in on safety and making sure I didn't hurt myself or hurt anybody else, starting in March. And so at that time, there were still gigs coming and stuff like that. And the whole situation was, remember in the beginning when they're like, maybe let's be over in 10 days, and I was just like, I don't think that's how that's going to be. So she's put together an awesome band. I don't know all the members, but I know this guitar player from Jive Mother Mary. I can't remember his name. That's what she's been doing there, and doing a lot more full band stuff. But I worked on her EP that was recorded and released in early 2020 with Doug. I'm so sorry, Doug. I can't remember your last name right now, but at Electromagnetic Studios there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so no, I hadn't played with her since that time. I was just kind of like, fuck music as far as like trying to sustain myself from it. I just like really wanted to be safe. And at that time I was just going safe financially and, physically. And so I'd go to work and come home and put on my mask all day at the doctor's office. And that was kind of it. So not really a lot of playing out for me.
Yeah. What was the hard part for you with all of that, with like trying to sustain yourself to the degree that you wanted to?
Well, I've never been, you would laugh to hear me say this if you see my social media, because I post all the time. But as far as actually trying to get gigs and stuff, I've never been much of a go-getter or a self-promoter. I find playing solo to be really exhausting, like emotionally very draining. And that's may sound ungrateful. I love it when I do it, and there's actually a room of people that can hear, and if they're paying attention, that's even better, but I would find it really exhausting. And I'm also very introverted. Again, you would laugh if you saw my social, but with my social, it's actually just me and my phone, and then
Right.
I can be social after the fact when I am in the comments on the internet. But in real life, I'm very introverted. The way that I value my time is I put my time into things that I know I'm going to feel I have a positive return on, which for me is if I'm at home, I know I'm going to feel good about the time that I spent at home. Whereas when I do social stuff, it's kind of a crapshoot. Half the time it was like, oh, that was good. And half the time it's like, I would have really rather stayed home. So what that means as far as music is, I do not find it natural, like probably most musicians, to go out and say to every, beer joint and vineyard and everything in the area and say like, hey, I want to get out and play and all that stuff. So just as far as the hard part in terms of existing and being able to pay my bills, that was a lot of it. And lesson wise, because that's a more, a lot of musicians who are able to teach turn to that because it's more steady, it's more stable and more dependable than the gig life. I wasn't really plugged in the way that I was back in 2016. I was doing music full time, and actually more like actually doing it full time. But I had a built-in lesson pool because I was teaching preschool music at Messiah Moravian Preschool through a program that they contracted to. And so at that time, every 4-year-old and every 2-year-old and 3-year-old had a younger brother, an older brother or an older sister or an older somebody who mom said, oh, they want to take guitar lessons. Mm-hmm. And so I sort of had this built-in network of that. And when, again, at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, when I jumped back into music full-time, again, i.e. quit my job, I didn't have that pool built in, and I wasn't able, in my internal motivation, I just wasn't able to like get the entrepreneurial thing going of like getting up and getting on the horse and making contacts, all this stuff, the pavement pounding figuratively, to really make that, to shake all that business out of the bushes, make it happen. So I was just like, that's why I'm so grateful to Casey and her mom, Olga, because she was gigging so regularly and she had been so in the game of routinely booking places that without making any new calls, which they were still doing, without making any new calls, she still had like pretty steady gigs going. So that floated me for that time. But then once it all like shut down, even when there were the occasional gigs that were still, the kind of COVID flouters, I was just like, I'm not comfortable doing that. It just didn't really work for me. So I sold guitars that weren't nailed down and, took some odd jobs and what little lessons I could teach online and stuff, and just kind of got by until late May. I was asked back to the eyewear place, and I'm just like, full-time job with health insurance? Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
No kidding.
So, yeah. So, I mean, that's always been a pendulum of, the stasis of, the regular job with all the NUI that induces and the feeling of being caged and all the things that artists feel because we don't want nobody to tell us what to do, but all the good things that come with being a zoo animal,
Yeah.
they feed you at the zoo. That's the nice part about being a zoo animal. You just show up and, your things kind of happen for you. And then on the other side, being completely on your own, I'm not built that way. I don't have the full-born entrepreneurial self, and that's something, speaking of the music community, is that one of my passion points is to get artists to admit that they are running businesses, because we're all so critical of the world and money and all these things, which we're right to be, but we're also in the world, and we're living this dichotomy of, well, I want to make a living this way. I should be able to make a living this way. I should be able to be, valued for my work, but then we don't want to engage with the mechanisms of being able to exist, i.e. deal with business and money stuff. And so I know I'm, again, all over the place, but those are the things that are the conversations that are going on when I'm weighing, dangerous freedom with safe imprisonment,
Yeah.
and those two things are always in conversation. And to land my thought here, hopefully, for me, I have found that it works to have that safe place that I go to, that I leave my house, that I can leave my personal insanity at my house, and I can go visit somebody else's system and their own strengths and insanity of their own, i.e. any business that you work for, and I can go, get a sense of purpose and value out of contributing in that space and be fed,
Right.
get a paycheck that's constant that I can depend on, even if it's, not living high on the hog, but at least it's consistent. You have that, and then I can leave. And yeah, maybe I don't have as much time for music and doing stuff like this as I would like to, but it ultimately comes down to what keeps me saner.
Yeah.
So this has been a good formula for sanity for me for the past year and a half.
I hear that completely, man.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, I'm glad you brought up social media. I mean, I'm very curious about your social media and stuff, because you are very active on
Very
it.
active.
I think you're like one of the first people I knew who I saw like mention TikTok. I think one other guy did back when it was called something else.
Musically.
Mm-hmm. But I saw you kind of being like, I think this is an interesting platform at one point in time. And I checked it out recently, and it's like, it looks like you do generate a lot of activity on there from what I can tell.
Yeah.
And then of course I also see that you have this way of communicating directly to artists, it looks like, as part of what you do with social media, and kind of encourage this sort of an understanding about the new way that social media works for the arts and stuff.
Yeah.
So what is so I guess maybe you can give me just a explanation of what you're doing with social media and like the different entities that you have and stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. So I first started posting socially outside of Facebook, because everybody had a Facebook. If you're 35, you had it, because that was our native social media platform after MySpace. Mm-hmm. So it started as a personal thing, and because I've always played music, and before I had any angle to create any awareness or any business stuff, I was a musician, and so I wanted people to hear my songs, so I would record stuff and post it there. So outside of that, the first I ever began to share anything was like YouTube, when at the time that I separated from my ex-wife, which was like late 2013. That, all love to her and her family and anybody who knows her, truly the best. For me, that situation was one where I had chosen to contain myself for the sake of maintaining stasis on this boat of a marriage, because I'm all over the place, as the listeners will hear on this podcast. So when I did that preface is to say, I don't want to say that some person I was with was holding me back. No, I made choices, So and it happened that opening, a separation is a pretty fair way to say that your life opens up in certain ways. It changes. The container that you had built your life around has been dissolved. And so for me, I did feel a sense of, openness, freedom to create without fear, mm-hmm. to create, write songs, perform whatever with less impact. You don't have this thing to lose. You don't have this thing to maintain. I think about that boat image for a relationship a lot. It's like, well, the boat's already been blown up, so like I don't have to worry about rocking it. And so psychologically, that liberated me a little bit. And I started thinking, I want to do the music stuff, I want to do this. So that's when I started recording songs and some lessons and things like that for YouTube. And that was at the time when, influencer wasn't a word yet. We're talking, 2014, or if it was in California and I didn't know about it.
Yeah.
It wasn't in Stokes County. It wasn't a word in Stokes County, I'll tell you that much. It was an innocent kind of thing, Of course, we all have this like senseless ambition, hope that like, I'm just going to like create music and then somehow the universe will notice my brilliance. And then I remember my brother, Matt, who's a visual artist and teaches at UVA now, him talking about that in high school or in college. Like, well, what was his plan? Well, my plan was that obviously somebody would notice how brilliant I am and then they would discover me. And there's nothing there. I mean, I guess it could be a thing, but for the 99.9+% of us, it's not a thing.
Yeah.
So, but I still had that kind of notion. Okay, if I put something out there. So that began my process of sharing in a venue where people could see it outside of real life, aka the internet, aka social media. So then I was late to Instagram relative to the people who were like early to Instagram, and I did the thing where you drag your feet and say this is stupid and kick and scream, and man, I hate being left out of this stupid party. And so I joined the stupid party, and then that was, at that time I was operating as Guitars Ruin Lives, which I love that thread, which I've mostly laid down for now. But Guitars Ruin Lives was the idea. It was me, it was just me posting my stuff, but it was definitely with an angle on the guitar community. And I came, if there was a philosophy attached to it, it was kind of an anti-perfectionist outlet, because as with, there's a whole term of, an Instagram guitar player, or which those terms they're silly, but there's a point to them. Cultures arise around what sort of takes off within a certain, platform, a certain space, be that in real life in a downtown bar, or be it on the internet on a platform.
Right.
And the culture that I think was largely, the culture around Instagram, and any pocket was around perfection. And now our conversation around that is kind of maturing, where people have, perfection fatigue, and it's, people want to see some more real stuff. But I like to consider myself a little bit ahead of the curve, and just being like, this is stupid. I'm not going to be the guy who spends 6 hours practicing to get the, doing 400 takes to get the 1 12-second take of me doing something really amazing. And I like to present this as if I was doing something noble, but it was really just self-protectionist, because I don't have the discipline to do that, So that was Guitars Ruin Lives. And then gradually I started to, I made a different account, which was Joshua Shelton Music Maker. And that was a place for me to say, okay, Guitars Ruin Lives. I really felt like I was servicing the guitar community more than promoting myself. And I was like, okay, I need a space that's for me and my music. And also YouTube is going on concurrently through all of this, which I've never been that serious about, but I've been consistent there. So Guitars Ruin Lives, Joshua Shelton Music Maker, I'm posting stuff there. And it really, I referred to those early YouTube posting my song stuff as quote unquote innocent, meaning there wasn't really an angle. I wasn't like thinking I was over the thinking I'm going to be discovered thing. I wasn't trying to like get product endorsements or anything like that. I was just, it's a creative outlet for me. It truly is. The internet is like another canvas, and you could put whatever you want on it. So that was happening, and I was still building Guitars Ruin Lives. And when I say building, again, there's no business. I don't sell anything on any of my stuff. I don't even, people know I teach lessons. So if you want to DM me and take a lesson, then great. But there's no product, it's just kind of like sharing. And that continued to be the case. And I never took it that seriously, but I really enjoyed it. And then at a certain point, I was working at Twin City Hive, probably early 2019. And my friend Nick Baggio of local band Gully, I think now mostly defunct, but they're around still. Shout out to Nick, good friend of mine. And he said something about me having a, quote, badass Instagram, a kick-ass Instagram. And I was like, that's never how I thought about that, because my stuff is all totally raw, straight to my iPhone. Shitty video quality, did we cuss on this podcast?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Fuck yeah. So, like lousy light, no lighting, no nothing, no production, no editing. And again, that's all just self-protectionist, because I've never put in the time to do the thing the way you're doing it here, and actually being able to edit stuff and present it in like quote unquote professional way. But I did that because it was my limitation, and I didn't want those technical limitations to keep me from sharing what I have to share, because A, I don't want that for myself, and B, I thought by way of example, that's an important thing for people to say, because I see so many artists not share, and in the internet terms, not post, because they feel like they don't have, I'm going to get my podcast going, but like I don't really have, I need to buy a good mic, I need a good camera, and I'm just like, no, you don't. Like, yeah, it might be nicer, but you can watch go to YouTube and you can find 10 million of the most polished, brilliantly produced pieces of content that suck, because there's nothing compelling about what's happening.
And the other way around,
And the other, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's where I hopefully at times have hit the mark of, I don't have the polished production down, but I try to present something compelling. I'm going to give you the chance to say anything you want to say, even though I know I'm nowhere near the answer to your
I'm
question.
following you, man. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I agree. I think I guess it sounds like what you're starting to gravitate toward is sort of explaining this passion you have for encouraging artists to use social media to to their advantage.
Yeah, it's putting yourself out there, because the thing I have to say, because anybody who's familiar with him will hear what I'm saying and be like, this guy's just copying that guy. So I discovered a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk, who's an entrepreneur, motivational speaker, business person, all kinds of things. Gary V is how he's known on social, and he's one of the first massive like social media mogul guys. So now I'm like a Gary V douchebag. And so his content really spoke. I discovered him in late 2019, and he really helped me blow up a lot of the ideological bullshit that I had built up as an artist about technology. And so if I were to try and distill that, the couple things I would say, one is that social media at this point is just a slang term for the internet. Because when we say social media, we're thinking about Facebook and all the shit show they've got going on over there. And we think about, what TikTok is doing to our kids, and, and how we're comparing to ourselves to each other on Instagram, and all that stuff's very real. But at the end of the day, it's like when I think about the time I spend on the internet, a whole lot more of it is within Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, than it is going to like www. You know what I mean? Unless I'm reading the news or like trying to like figure out how to fix my toilet, and even then I go to YouTube, right?
Yeah.
So social media is just, if the internet is like water, and social media are like the theme parks, and each one's a little bit different and has its own flavor. And this one's more popular with people under 25, and this one's more popular with these people. So that really helped me like get over the whole like, well, I don't want to learn a new platform. That's stupid. Just that kind of thinking that's very natural to get into, because we're animals, and you and me are not 17 anymore. And so then you get older, and then you start digging in, and you start getting scared, and you start getting cynical, and all those things that make you just write stuff off. So yeah, for me, social media is just like back to, okay, well, if the internet is a gallery, then, each platform is just like another room in the gallery. And yeah, they're going to have different flavors, and every gallery, just like every gallery in real life, has its own flavor of bullshit, that's just stupid, but you can put up whatever you want to, that's my thing. When TikTok was early and everybody's right, oh, that's just for like 14-year-old girls dancing. Well, sort of, yeah, it was. And Instagram was just for photographers, and Facebook was just for college students. Literally, for anybody young enough listening or watching that doesn't know this, you could not have a Facebook account unless you went to a college which was in that network of things, right? So eventually it's just another party, and it started as a photography party if it's Instagram, and now it's an everything party. And TikTok started as a lip syncing and 14-year-old girls dancing party, and now you can go watch homesteaders tell you how to survive off of the grass living in your yard,
Yeah.
So that was a liberating thing. And again, back to Gary Vee, that's where I kind of got that. And that's where I started to go like, okay, there's opportunity here that me and everybody is taking for granted, because, as he likes to say, to do what we're going to do with this podcast, where you get it. And, if somebody in, Kuala Lumpur wanted to listen to this, they could. Even 25 years ago, to do that, you would have had to have millions of dollars and access to a satellite, and and now we have a device in our pocket that's more powerful than the one that Ronald Reagan used to run the free world. That's another Gary Vee-ism, all these little things. And I'm just like, okay, it just helped me get over the whole like I hate technology thing. So I'm just like, what the fuck is that? Like, it's just again, this is a message, a thing that keeps coming through, is self-protectionism of like, I don't want to learn nothing, is pretty much what that boiled down to for me. And the protectionist instinct of feeling like anybody younger than you is stupid, just like we were seen as stupid to people who were boomers, or whatever.
Get off my lawnism.
It's get off my lawn, or just like, that lawn sucks, that lawn's stupid. So that's a real roundabout way of saying that now I'm very, very active, because for a few reasons. One is definitely my personal ambition. I don't know what it even looks like, again, because I'm not selling anything and I don't really want to. But just the awareness of having attention to what you're doing this is the last big Gary Vee thing that I got through, is that, at the end of the day, attention is the only asset. Whatever you're trying to do, whether you want to make a handsome living recording podcasts and making concerts, and making records, whether you want to run for political office or whether you're trying to, fund or cure for heart disease or whatever. If you don't have somebody's attention, ain't shit happening. Nothing's happening. So it begins with having attention. And so am I attention seeking? Yeah. Yeah, I am. I sure am. But the point is, for me, what he also helped me see, I guess I'm not done talking about Gary Vee. What he helped me see is that to get over the other big obstacle that I see people, especially artists, have around posting is they're like, I don't want to feel, it feels douchey, like the old personal brand thing, like I don't want to feel like people to think I'm so into myself or whatever. And the fact that I'm worried about what people thinking I'm into myself already means that I really, really care about what other people think about me, which I do. I'm trying to get over that. It's a lifelong journey. And B, it doesn't have to be about you. Like, that's been the really liberating thing for me, is that like my content, as it's gone on, early on, it was probably more about me, because that's all I knew to do. And then I got this different perspective where it's like, no, you might be looking at me, but I'm pointing at something. Right. I'm saying, look at that. And for me, if I died tomorrow, or if I'm able to keep doing whatever it is that I'm doing in real life and on the internet for another 10 years, that I'm pointing to is playing guitar. And it was done in a more diffuse way earlier, in a less focused way, a less conscious way, more convoluted way. But now it's become very intentional that I am telling people play guitar, and helping them with the mechanics of that and helping them with the inspiration of that. And to hopefully wrap this up in a neat little bow, that goes back to why I'm trying to tell people, like, get over it, post, don't worry about what other people think about it. Don't worry about whether your production is perfect. Don't worry about whether you feel like you're being douchey because you're being too self-promotional or whatever. Just the act of sharing your stuff, if we can get over this dichotomy of internet versus in real life, if you're sharing, you're practicing vulnerability, you're practicing dealing with hate, quote unquote, which is really, if you're going to be an artist, you should probably develop some kind of devices for dealing with that. And the internet is a great way to do that, because boy, people feel safe, telling you that you're fucking blow on the internet. So it's like, that's good practice. And then it's practice also for learning new media, because you and I have seen a lot of change from, how old are you?
I'm 32.
You're 32. Okay. Yeah. So let's say 20 years. When you were 12 and when I was 15, I mean, yeah, I had a Yahoo Mail account and I knew that, I had AOL Instant Messenger, but there's a big gap between that and what's happening now. Okay. So what's going to happen between 2021 and 2041? Like, it's going to be weird. It's going to get real weird. And so I see so many people, millennials and even older Gen Z people who are just like already doing the technology retirement thing.
Yeah.
Are already being like, I just can't. It's too much. And I'm just like, do you know how fucking irrelevant and useless you're going to be in 30 years? And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying, like, think about the people when people 10 years ago who were 54 and they're like, I didn't grow this email. I don't need to learn that. Well, guess what? They got laid off. They got fucking fired because they couldn't deal.
Yeah.
And so that's the other thing that the reason that I'm no technologist. I'm just like trying to give people some practical perspective of like, man, the world is about to it's already very weird, and not just in the arts, just in general, the way we make money, the way that everything is organized is totally fragmenting. And if you want to be able to survive, much less thrive, going into a very uncertain, uncharted future where technology is like going to continue to massively disrupt our lives, it's probably good to get into a mode where you are actively engaging with what is new, including when it makes you feel like an idiot, including especially when it makes you feel old and you feel like you have no idea what's going on. Because the more you practice that and stay in tune with it, the better chance that you're not going to get laid off when you're 42 and because you have no idea, because you decided when you were 28 that I just don't want to fool with all that technology stuff. I'm not into technology because I like it or I want to be. I'm into it because I feel like I have to be to do any of the things that I have an ambition to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an interesting and worthwhile message what you're sort of trying to put out there. I've gone back and forth about it myself. You know, I mean, I've certainly been cynical about it. I was like you with Instagram and with a lot of things. I just kind of refused to participate until I started to see. I'd always be on the late side of the bloom, and I'd start to see how significant or whatever it was becoming, how much people were kind of under the thumb of whatever, of the influence that could be attained or whatever through Instagram. So, you know, eventually I would come around. I've had the same attitude for the most part about TikTok, which I'm currently starting to think clearly I must be wrong if I'm like, if I'm just refusing opportunities to engage with people, with audiences where they are,
yes,
then clearly I probably have the wrong attitude about it. But I think, and I noticed the exact problem that you're describing. I see it in some of my peer musician friends, which I think that's why somebody just looking on to somebody else could be cynical about anybody, what they're doing in social media or trying to tell people like, hey, this is what you should be considering about social media. I can see why somebody could be cynical about it, but the problem is I see a lot of musicians, particularly our age or older, who are jumping ship and just kind of being like, if that's what it takes to be in the music industry these days, then fuck it. I'll just give up that dream.
Sure.
And it's like, why would you do that? Like, that's a little drastic. You know, you could just engage with where the market is. You engage with people where the market is. And that's what every business has to do, is kind of not demand that a market exist where they need them to, but you do have to kind of appeal to where people's tastes take them and people's tastes are. And I guess the last bit of that is just, I think the way I've decided to deal with that problem, the problem of because I think the problem for me sometimes feels like I don't want social media and the marketplace necessarily to dictate everything I do about the way I present art.
Yeah.
Because for me, it is still artistic.
Sure.
And I don't want to make things that only serve the purpose of landing well on Instagram or something like that.
Absolutely.
I want to make things that are consistent with my vision. So I guess the road that I've decided to take, which might not be the most beneficial road, but I've just decided if I were talking to musicians about it, I think it's valuable to just kind of narrow in on the platforms that you care about being on. And if that means you don't have a Twitter and you don't engage with people on there, or you don't fuck with Instagram or whatever it is, if you sacrifice some of those, but you find a niche in the ones that you actually enjoy, and people can see that you actually enjoy participating and engaging in these platforms, I kind of think that's the sweet spot.
Totally. You can, because it's not, it doesn't have to be either or. Like I'm not like in Discord 2 hours a day building a community. I don't post on, I'm not on Clubhouse, there's a million things I'm not doing. So not everybody only has a certain bandwidth, but what you can do is put your arbitrary numbers. You can put your 80% of your attention into the thing that you know is working for me. It's totally what I've been doing. I've been doing that on TikTok because I got on there at a good time where the organic reach, meaning people see you without you having to pay for them to see you, was really high, which is why there's a reason I have, this is not a flex, it's fucking crazy. There's a reason I have almost 38,000 top followers on TikTok and I have just over 1,000 on Instagram. It's not because I'm so much cooler and better on TikTok than I am on Instagram. It's because I got to Instagram a lot later. There were a lot more ads. Everybody and their grandma was on it, literally. And so, literally. And so it was just harder to reach people. If you go into, a new platform and there's more people viewing than there are creating, well, that's real good news for the creators, because even if your content is nothing to write home about, they got to show them something. So they're going to see a lot of stuff. So I got on there at a good time, and that worked out that way. So I put 80%, again, arbitrary numbers, into that. And then I take that stuff and I cut it up for Instagram stories. And then sometimes I do longer form stuff that makes more sense on YouTube, and I cut up some of that and put it on there. So as long as you're staying at least open enough, if you're not just going here, I think that everybody, I'm not interested in telling anybody what they should do. I am interested in saying, hey, don't cut yourself off from opportunity because you just decided in your head that I don't want to do, I hate oysters. I've never eaten them, but I fucking hate them. You know what I mean? I actually did have oysters one time and I fucking hated them. And maybe I should try it again. But you know, that's the attitude that so many people have about just, man, I fucking hate TikTok. Never tried it. Just hate it. I just hate it. You know, same way about France. Never been there, but it's the worst. You know, it's just, that's what we do. And so what, if I'm telling anybody to do anything, it's just to loosen that thing up a little bit, because it's just not helping you. All that I want is for people to get what they want. And I'm in the process of figuring out how to do that for myself. And as I've noticed things that work, and more importantly, as I've noticed the things that I had up in my head that were just cutting off my nose to spite my face, so that I could maintain some purity as an artist or something like that. That was the story I told myself, which wasn't real. When I started to question those things and open them up, a lot of opportunity seems to have opened up for me. And so that's the encouragement I have for people. I don't care if people post every day or not, but it's like, if you want to get more success in whatever you're doing, and of course that can mean financial, but for artists, for musicians particularly, we mostly just want people to hear what we did. You know, we want people to have a chance to hear it. If you want people to hear what you did, we have this wonderful outlet to be able to do that. It's not going to always work the way you want it to, and you might not love everything that exists within it, you know, everything that exists within a social media platform or what have you. But the fact remains that it's an incredible opportunity. So don't cut off the opportunity just to suit your own ideology. Because in the end, you're going to end up, you're going to do what those friends of yours are doing. And it's just like, this is your life's dream, but you're going to give it up because I don't fuck with TikTok. You know what I mean? That's just an example.
Yeah.
It's just, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that, you know?
I mean, I think some of what's behind what you're talking about probably is something I have in common with you in some way, with wanting to do this and like bring you over here, bring people over here.
Yeah.
What do you think that thing is where it's not quite, it's like you want it. What do you think that is in a competitive field like music or whatever, if you want to call it a competitive field, in a field where you rely on people's attention? What do you think the motivation is to encourage other people to also strive for that attention? It's like, it's not enough for me to pursue it myself. I also want other people to be courageous enough to do it if they care about it.
You're saying, what is that for me that motivates me to
for
do that?
both of us, for in general, what is it that makes you want a music community more than just an individual?
Right. So if you're looking at the world in a zero-sum game framework, then you would think, I found something that works. I don't want to tell anybody about it, right? You've met teachers like that. You've met musicians like that. They're assholes. Number one, I don't want to be an asshole.
Right.
I want to be a nice person. I would like to think that most of the time I am one. So that's just stupid. I found a gold mine. Don't tell anybody. You know, it's like, no, I don't want my friend to be hungry. Right. Like, you know, I found a spring of water. And so if you're in a zero-sum game mentality, then yeah, that would make sense to not encourage other people to seize opportunity and to see and seize opportunity. That's fun to say. So I don't think that, and the world is so in a zero-sum mindset right now. I don't mean that's generally how it's been, but I don't think it's that way. Like I really don't, and I don't want to get into global financial systems or anything like that, but in general, when you start to sell, another shout out to a local business. So Sea Park Music was downtown in Winston-Salem from 1939. Now they're in Louisville, but they've been, as far as I know, continuously operating all that time. And I used to work for them when I first moved to Winston-Salem in 2009. I got a job as their educational representative, which meant that I was a sales rep to the schools. They had band and orchestra literature and gear, instruments and reeds and strings and all that stuff. And my job was to have develop relationships with the local band directors and orchestra teachers and say, what do you need? Spring concert's coming up. What do you need? And do that kind of stuff. And my boss there, the owner of the business, the owners are Marlene and Drew Parker, and Drew was my boss there. And he talked about competition within music stores and what his mentor had told him, which is that most people are looking at the pie as if there is one pie that is one size and we are all fighting over pieces of the pie. and of course there's reality to that in a lot of ways. But what he said was, instead of doing this, why don't we focus on growing the pie? So I'm definitely about a grow the pie mentality. I don't think, now, yes, if you're looking at musicians, let's make this real for whoever's listening to this. Okay, there's only X venues and there's only X nights a week and there's only what, so is there a limitation to how many, seats, how many people will get to play at X venue in a year? Of course there is. So in that sense, yeah, it's certainly competitive. But when it comes to attention and what can come from that attention, meaning potentially business things, selling things, whether it's your music or your gear or whatever, I don't think there's this kind of like cap on that. I don't think when you look at I don't think that Tyler Nail getting more popular as a musician makes Joshua Shelton less popular as a musician. I don't think, it's not like, hey, checked out this new band, I forgot my favorite band. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, we have limited time, but it's just, we have this idea like it's like one in, one out policy in my brain. It's not true. You know what I mean? I just love more artists. Yeah, I might not think about, Tool as much now as I did when I was 17, but I still love them. They're still there. So that encouragement part, and it's ultimately what it comes down to when thank you for helping me reflect on this stuff, because I don't think about why I do the things I'm motivated to do. I just know that I'm motivated to do them, and I don't.
Sometimes that's good enough. Yeah.
That's true. So, my parents and my grandparents both were extremely service-oriented people, and that took different forms, teaching Sunday school, my dad being a mayor of Danbury for some years in the 80s, my mom being on every freaking, hospital board and church board. They gave their time like it was their job, and to all kinds of things that they thought were important. And I don't think they ever felt like that took away from anything. It was that they cared and they wanted to serve. I don't think that what I'm doing is anywhere as noble, as the things that they were up to. But I do think that just like instilled in me, I'm going to go somewhere really weird. Ever since I was like 4, younger, from the time I was conscious that I was going to die. And it freaked me out a lot. Not because I was scared of death, but just because I was just like, what is this? Like, everybody's talking about church. They're talking about where I'm going after I die. I'm like, where did I come from before I was born? And I was just always thinking about life in high stakes kind of way. And so I've always been super aware of that. And you got to be careful when you're an artist and tend towards depressive nature. And you think about that stuff, you'll end up, pretty nihilistic pretty quick. And I've gone through those stages too. But what it brought me to ultimately was, either the stuff I do matters or it doesn't. And there's no way to really know. And so, well, do I want to be happy? Yes, I do want to be happy. Which makes me happier, thinking that nothing matters or thinking that everything matters? Thinking that everything matters that I do makes me a lot happier. It's scarier because all of a sudden you have like accountability and you have like to think about how you're living your life and the impact you're having on other people. You have to think that what you do actually matters. That's scary. That's why it's so attractive right now, especially when the world seems to be in such shambles. So many people have opted for nothing matters because it's comforting. Cynicism is comfortable. Nothing matters. Everything sucks. Everything is stupid. Therefore, I don't have any responsibility is what that amounts to. So if everything matters and no, life is actually basically good, and yet there's all this horrible fucked up stuff, how do I reconcile that and my life matters? That suddenly it's a very scary place to be, but it's also empowering if you choose to take on that mantle. And so for me, back to your question of why would I tell people where the spring is that I'm drinking from, it's that I just want to help people. And that's not a noble thing. I didn't do that for myself. My parents and my grandparents and God knows how many generations before, DNA wise, passed that on. Is that I know that whether it happens when I'm 45 or when I'm 95, if I'm lucky enough to know that I'm dying before I die, I don't want to look back and be like, I didn't help anybody. You know what I mean? Like, cause you're going to be gone. You're going to be forgotten. I don't care how many grandkids you got. Like, eventually you're going to be forgotten. So the you doesn't matter, but the impact matters a lot. And for me, that's where the motivation and trying to help is that I want to know if next week I found a lump somewhere and then I went to the doctor and then they said, bad news, Josh, 6 months and you're out. I want to be able to look back, even if it's in something that seems as arbitrary and silly as social media. I want to say, like, man, there's some 14-year-old version of me out there that saw one of my videos and he had kind of given up on guitar. But then I get emotional about this, but then he saw one of my videos and he picked up his guitar. And who is that kid going to be when he's 35? And who's he going to be impacting? So it's very selfish, actually. The motivation to do that is because I want to feel good. And the thing that makes me feel the best is feeling like I've helped somebody else, period, end of sentence. And for me, I do that in music because it's what I know and it's what I'm good at.
Yeah, selfish is a difficult word, but, something that makes your life feel like you're serving the world better or like you're doing something better with your time. Yeah, maybe that could be interpreted as it's something that comforts you or brings something positive your way, but it sure is a hell of a lot better than driving driving nose first into the side of a mountain or something, or not giving a shit about your life or whatever.
Yeah. If we can make selfish not a bad word, selfish can be bad if it goes to bad ends.
Right.
If selfish leads to good things, then how can selfish be bad?
Yeah. So I mean, taking care of yourself is the same idea as whatever the concept of being selfish is.
Yeah.
You're people take glee in you taking care of yourself and like treating yourself like you fucking matter to the world. It's a good thing to do. Anybody who's walking around telling people not to take care of themselves is not somebody that you ought to really be taking advice from.
Right. Right. And it's not just because it is, in my little ethical moral scheme of how the universe works, it's not just because that's right or because it's better. It's because it's actually practical. And that goes back to this is all part of the same conversation of me encouraging other people to do stuff that's going to help them connect with their passion. What it comes down to is if it gets me off to help other people find their thing and do their thing, okay, sure, that's selfish because like I'm getting the thing that makes me feel like, fuck yeah, I'm alive. This is good. And it's helping other people. So selfless are in this interesting kind of yin yang thing where you can be selfish in a way where it's just like, fuck all y'all, I'm going to get mine. And that's a different kind of selfish. That kind of selfish is not good. But if you're selfish in a way where you can find out what makes you tick and participate in that, and inviting other people into that makes you tick even more, and that helps them tick, well, that's a really nice little chain reaction that's going on. That's where selfish is a good thing. That's not a bad thing at all. So I feel extremely fortunate to have found that, and not just in music and playing music itself, because as beautiful as that is, like to me, the satisfaction level in making music on its own without some kind of community building, there's a real cap on that. Like it might feel really amazing now and again when I get a Stratocaster sounding just right, but that's like lightning in a bottle. That does not happen very often. And when it does, it happens and it's over. Even a beautiful concert, like you and I had that amazing concert for your release. I've played with Vagabond Saints back in 2012. Amazing concerts, great memories. But when you just look at the music itself and nothing else, for me at least, there's a real cap on the satisfaction that comes from that. The satisfaction that doesn't have a cap on it is in the connectivity of the people that were involved in it, the memories, the fact that I can remember being in the green room with you and Mike Kenshin and Daniel Faust, before that show, and just like the fact that the whole room was like fucking into what we were doing, and it's just like, that's amazing. So that's where, for me, building the connectivity, the community building around music has, while it might have at first seemed like a derivative of music, it's almost like it used to be the cart and now it's like the horse. It's weird. They've switched, and I've never noticed that. That's a great way to put it for myself, is that, it used to be music was the horse and community was the cart. And now I'm just like, nah, community is the jam. I'm just lucky that music is my way of doing it. For somebody else, it might be running a business. For somebody else, it might be dancing or like whatever, going to church, whatever their thing is. It's the community building thing of getting people connected and feeling empowered and impassioned about life. Because we have a real, it's about to be Preacher Josh, and I don't mean religiously, but Preacher Josh about to get up on the soapbox, because like we have a real crisis of meaning, like major crisis of meaning on our planet right now, and in this country in particular. And people feel so disconnected from themselves. You see it everywhere in real life. And I mean, people are sad, people are cynical, people are all that. And I get it, like really get it. And so whatever happens politically or in the world and all that stuff, if that part's not fixed, like it doesn't matter if you're living in utopia, if you're disconnected from self and from others, like you're not happy and life is not good. So to be able to create anything, to have an entry point to that kind of community building, which again for me happens to be music. It could have been anything. That's just what happened because my circumstances, my environment, my DNA. I have an outlet to be able to do that. And the one thing I can pat myself on the back for is I actually put in the work over 20 plus years to get pretty good at playing guitar and writing songs and singing. Like I'm just lucky that I've got that. Okay, I'm off the soapbox now.
Well, you're right. You are right. I mean, it's there's a cult. I don't know what to call it, man. But yeah, there is a bit of a problem in the world as far as meaning is concerned. And community, according to some people, is really important to that. And ultimately, I think that's what when I look at our community that we actually immediately live in. Like when I go out to where we live in the towns that we live around, that's what I think back on 10 years ago, and that's sort of what it felt like was going on. It was like, I mean, I just remember the first time I played at the garage. Richard booked me to open for Lee Terry, and it was like a release thing.
Epic.
And it was like, I'd played at Cranky's a few times, but playing at the garage, it was like different. It was off limits in some different way. So I got to play with them, and then I just remember this feeling. Like that was the night I met Doug Davis and all the people in their little crowd of players and stuff, and like got all these made all these Facebook connections. And it was probably within a year or two of that I started meeting people like Mike Bennett and just other people that play in that world of music. And as a whatever I was, 21-year-old or 22-year-old. I was looking into a community that already existed, all these people that knew each other and that had this thing in common, this like religious addiction to music or whatever. And I was like trying to find my way into that whole thing and like know all these people and everything. And right now it just feels like, this is a way different example, I guess, from the worldwide problem of meaning, whatever that means culturally. But I mean, the internet has changed things pretty significantly. Right now, to me, it feels like it's, while it's given a lot of people access to a lot of information and it has the potential to open you up to other crowds, like with your guitar thing, you have the ability to be in part of a community that's much larger than Winston with just being in the real guitar centered community of online shit on Instagram or whatever. But in our immediate community, people that we try to be around in person, it feels like a lot of those avenues for connecting to people have shut down, given that so many venues have disappeared, that really there's very few places to play in our area now. We have one, and it is doing what it can to to make it the best that it can be. But I mean, I still have, I don't know. I don't know what to say exactly about that. I don't want to like say anything incorrectly. I guess it just feels like at the garage and stuff in smaller venues, I think that were more appropriate for the shows that we used to play and the shows that I play now. It was a different kind of community gathering than I feel like what we have access to right now, that I feel like we're missing.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can't be afraid to go at things that could feel discouraging, because the fact is they're already there. Naming it is a good thing, and people are discouraged for good reason. I mean, people who are full-time musicians who know that's really is what they do, not like me who like dabbled in it now and again. Like they lost their jobs legit, even if they could like still get a odd job here and there. It's hard and it's depressing. And so naming it is not a bad thing. It's interesting. I get it, but it was so interesting throughout 2020 listening to podcasts from musicians and hearing them try so hard not to talk about coronavirus. It's just, they're just like, well, it's just like not talk about this whole thing that's reshaped our entire lives. Like, yeah, it blows, but like it's our lives right now. So to move forward with that, hopefully in a proactive way, that does suck. It is hard. I don't know what it's like to be, I'm 35 now. So roughly when I moved to Winston, it was about a decade ago. I was about 25. And I was in my own way doing what you were doing. And I was doing it more from like an instrumental music perspective, because that was my easiest in, was to go to a funk jam and bring an electric guitar. And that was my in to introduce myself to people. Yeah, I don't know what that is right now for a 18 or 22 or whatever year old who's in the Winston area and trying to do that. I'm sure they'll find a way, but it is hard. That sense of in real life, while it is, I don't think in real life and internet are either or, which hopefully has been one of the things that I've been able to get across in this podcast, but they're very different,
yeah.
And the in real life component of, like when you talk about even just physical space. I mean, the garage, for example, for anybody who's from around here who's been there, it's integrated into it's right next to a lot of other businesses and things that you might have a reason to go there besides just going there.
Right.
And so when you say one main venue being Ramcat, beautiful, lovely place that it is, Richard and Kim being awesome people. And who was it you interviewed last week?
Andy Tennille.
Yeah, Andy, all awesome people that are involved and doing an incredible job and being very thoughtful and considerate regarding people's safety and health and doing all the right things. At the same time, there's just physical differences of like, okay, it's cool that Wise Man's right there, but it's still very different standalone kind of experience compared to something that felt way more like woven. And that's true even outside of the whole global pandemic. So then you layer that on top of it. Yeah, it's a tough spot. It's definitely like a hard, that in real person synergy, in real life synergy of you happened to go open for Lee Terry and then you met Doug Davis, who beforehand was just like some, guy that you didn't know. And now, is like a fucking fungi amongst this national network of other musical mushrooms popping up and all the projects, not to mention all the stuff he does in Winston-Salem and all the people that he's connected to and all the people they're connected to and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a lot more, while the internet gives us incredible connectivity, it's pretty watered down compared to those kinds of experiences. And that's something, I think it's fair to grieve. But I also think we have to have context of like the Spanish flu didn't last forever. World War II didn't last forever. This is bad, and not to diminish anybody who's lost loved ones and all that stuff. I mean, certainly not to diminish any of that, but just to zoom out for a moment in global context. This sucks and it's going to change the world forever, but it's not going to last forever in the iteration that it's in. Like, this is a big, gnarly, ugly speed bump, but it's not the road.
Yeah.
And so thinking about the road ahead, I think, is what you're kind of trying to do. One of the things that you're trying to do with this podcast and get people talking about it before we get there so we can have more of a vision for how to move forward.
For sure, to some degree. I think also, I mean, it's like, I think it's just about specifying something, man. Like, I think all I'm trying to do is just find and connect with people who could say, I give a shit about what music options I have in this area. And if that's probably a kind of backward way to think about using the internet, because I could I could target a different community altogether or something. I could set my sights on, I want people in Colorado to see the videos I make.
Sure.
But I don't know. I'm just trying to put a spotlight on what's actually going on in our community, because I feel like, the papers kind of went away from that direction, as did the radio shows and stuff. Clearly that it wasn't the news that was dominating the market at some point. And I guess that, I don't know if that also is related to, I don't know if that's connected at all to the fact that, some of the venues in town either stopped existing or just stopped having music, different things like that. But regardless, I mean, that doesn't mean the artists went away. That doesn't mean that people stopped making music. Maybe that means that music returns now to something that is done rather than what it was 10 years ago, like a wide net that you cast out trying to catch as many fish as you can. Maybe now it is more privately social, like what's going on in Danbury, what's going on in people's backyards and living rooms, where people, it reminds me, the vibe I guess I'm feeling right now is that it reminds me of probably a time when people went around playing churches or playing people's houses on the weekends. which I'm
awesome.
I'm cool with all that. I love it all, but I think also it's just nice to try to target an audience that maybe wants to see those people. Maybe they want to have some of those people come play in their backyard or in their living room or at their stage or whatever the situation is. Just fucking acknowledge the fact that there are artists here that are trying to make music, and like, let's have more clarity about what they're doing in this ocean of information and artists out there. Let's talk about the ones that are doing it in North Carolina.
No, I think that's an incredible way to use whatever resources you have, including the internet. Of course, is that it's one of the things that's changed for me is seeing the internet instead of as like an alternative to real life. It can be that. Certainly, there's people that just live online. It can also be a gateway to real life experiences. You know, I just had coffee with Shirley and Robert McDaniel, who were friends of mine, regulars when I worked at Twin City Hive with Joey and Terry there, and not that I got to know them through real life, but I got to know them a lot better through the internet, which led me to going to have coffee with them at their house in real life, which would not have happened if it weren't for the internet part in the middle, because I wouldn't have just been like, you older couple that is my parents' age who seem very cool and thoughtful and kind, you want to have me over for coffee? You know, that would be weird.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be an either or thing. And so with what you're doing, I think that's incredibly powerful. If we take the concept of like a concentration, like how strong your coffee is, that big wide net thing, again, quite watered down. You might have 1 million gallons of coffee, but they hardly have any flavor. So if you're looking at making some espresso here in the local community, I think that's an amazing way to use that connectivity. And there's a lot of people. Do you know Stokes County Boys? You know that podcast?
No. How do I not know about this?
Because they're a little bit older than you and I, certainly than you. It's a couple of my brother's friends here they're in the King area, and they've been doing for, I think, a little over a year, have been doing this podcast where they're interviewing mostly local people, business people and old friends. They just interviewed my brother Matt, who they had been really close with and hadn't talked for 15 years, and they had a reunion, on the podcast. Like, they're doing that same kind of thing of just being like, and they have some people that aren't local too, but the idea is, gathering all these pieces of, people's stories and the tapestries of our lives that can feel very private and disconnected, and trying to gather, trying to get that together and expose these stories to again, not more people in the sense of like, 10 million people in, like you said, California heard about this, or like, wow, somebody in New York listened, but expose it to more people in the sense of like, you just found out about a podcast by and for Stokes County people, you know what I mean? Like, in that way where because I think, this theme that's coming through, and for anybody listening, Tyler and I were talking about this before the podcast, it's all here. We are not Winston-Salem, Stokes County, that whole kind of, I think of them together because that's where my world has been, from Danbury to Winston down to Lexington, whatever your boundary you want to write around it. The raw material is not missing, and that's almost always how it is whenever anybody's talking about a scene and how it could be different and how it could be better. Everybody always thinks money's going to do it. Okay. Money never hurt a project. You know what I mean? But like, it's not going to make a project. It's the connectivity of getting people aware of each other, back to awareness and attention and all those things. And it doesn't have to be on the internet. It doesn't have to be in real life. It can be either way, and it can be both. They can blend. And talking about, I'm jumping around here, but back to what you were saying about a music scene today is not going to be what it was 10 years ago. I think we kind of have to get over the idea of that. I can be sad about it. I'm sad about it personally. I just also know that my personal feelings don't matter, like they don't matter in the sense that the world doesn't care. The world's moving on. So I think moving on, we're going to see the line, not just in music, but in work. We're already seeing it in work. People are working remotely. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just the line is going to get blurred. Does that freak me out? Of course it does. But it's just happening. You know what I mean? So it's like, kind of get used to it and figure out what to do with it, which is my same message about the internet. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying technology's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying this shit's kind of like gravity at this point. You can bitch and moan all you want about how you can't fly, but that's not going to get you very far. It would be better to figure out how to work with it, and that's what technology is. So I think the line, if you're going back to a music scene and a community and all that line between in real life and online is going to be more blurred. There's going to be, if you take what you're doing right here, for instance, and what if tonight, instead of this podcast, you were hosting a very small concert, or you were hosting an In the Round, with songwriters and all that stuff. And you also had, let's imagine coronavirus didn't exist, just for example, or even it did exist and you had very carefully, arranged 6 extra people in here. Or if coronavirus didn't exist and you packed in way more people than the fire code would ever allow and you hear it, well, those people are there in real life, but it's kind of a given now that anything you do in real life, you're probably going to broadcast in some way, whether immediately or after the fact. You could do that. And so then you're like hybridizing these things.
Yeah.
And then if you say, no, fuck that. I hate that. I hate that everything is recorded and all that. Well, cool. This one concert a month you can do. And it's like, there are no phones allowed. You can literally do that if you want to, you want to be a Luddite for a day, you can do that. And you can have a concert that's just, and everything in between. So I think just like opening the options of both instead of either can really help us begin to move forward. I want to say one more thing. It's what are you going to do with it? I'll tell you, when I was at Guilford College, you've seen the movie Patch Adams, Robin Williams. You know of the movie?
I know of the movie, yeah.
So he's this clown doctor. Well, that's a real guy. And he came to Guilford twice when I was there. His son was a freshman there when I was a senior. Lars Adams, amazing person. Patch Adams, amazing person. And Patch is like, the movie doesn't, if anybody's seen it, it's virtually nothing to do other than the basic idea of like a doctor who uses laughter as medicine. Like that's kind of the end of where the similarities were. But he talked about a lot of stuff. He's a really intense guy, does a lot of good work all over the planet, clowning in hospitals in destitute places where there is no medicine. And he gets to leave a room and have a mother who has a terminally ill child say to him, the hour when you were there clowning for my child was the first time he wasn't screaming in agony for the last 2 years. That's the kind of stuff Patch Adams does. So he spoke, and the one thing I took away from it was he talked about 2 types of living, that there's essentially 2 types of living you can do. One is called because living, and the other is so that living.
I heard this. Yeah, go ahead. I heard something like this recently.
Yeah. So because living is where we're basically conditioned to be, which is, well, because I was born in this environment and because my dad was this way and because I didn't get to this kind of school and because weighs you down so low. So that eventually because of all that now, this is who I am. That's not to dismiss the real challenges and difficulties and injustices and inequalities of the world, but it's just as a personal framework of psychology, that's how a lot of people live. One could have a different mode of living, which is called so that. So it's the difference between reactive living and proactive living. So that living says, instead of starting with what happened, therefore I am this way, you flip it and you say, because I want to be this way, because I want to live in this kind of world, because I want things to go this way, I will do this so that I want to be a kind person. I will do these actions so that I am enacting being a kind person in the world. I want there to be less hunger. I will volunteer at a whatever or donate money to a whatever so that. So it's extremely, it can sound really cheesy if you're in a cynical place like I was at the time, but it's just inarguably a more practical framework to approach life if you want your life to be more like the way you want it to be versus feeling like you just have to take whatever's handed to you. It's just a much more practical approach. So where I want to bring that to what you were saying about what's going to come out of this, I think, where do we go from here? Fucking coronavirus, whatever, the whole deal. Of course, it's going to be there in some form like the flu forever, but we're not always going to be in this state, right? So I look at it as kind of like back to this thematics of something, a boat or a certain situation being blown up, just like my life was blown up when my marriage ceased to be what it was. And so it's like, okay, there's a way in which this sucks. That is true, and it happened. So what do I want to do? And so I think that's very much how I see the whole post-pandemic universe. And instead of going to the universe or the whole world or the country or even your state, I think what you're doing is incredible because you can obviously make the most impact where you are. And so if you want to look at Stokes, it's kind of an opportunity to say, whether you're looking at Stokes, Winston-Salem downtown music scene, or you're looking at, Danbury and the Arts Place and Midsummer Brewing out in Westfield and all these little, or your backyard or my parents' backyard or my backyard, literally, you're saying, what if we had a blank canvas here, which in a way you can, what would we want it to look like? And you just make that, which was always an option. By the way, for anybody listening, I'm not saying it's easy. I didn't say it's easy, but you can make what you want. What do I want my local music scene to look like? Wouldn't it be awesome if we had a roving once a month, small outdoor concert festival thing in this little network of, a little music trail or whatever. And these things exist, we're not inventing any kind of wheel here, but it's deciding what kind of wheel you want and implementing it where you are. And it starts with attention and connection of, bringing attention to what the fact is that you're trying to do this thing. And then the connection of bringing in the right people to help you decide what it is and shape it and flesh it out and get the word out, and to bring in the other people that you wouldn't know, you yourself might not know should be involved.
Right.
To have those moments where it's one of the coolest, most bittersweet moments you can have in your life is when you meet somebody through a mutual friend, and the mutual friend goes, I can't believe you two don't know each other. Mm-hmm. Y'all should have been friends 10 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That feeling. So you can help people have that feeling sooner than later with what you're doing here. And that's awesome.
I hope, and luckily, I'm glad to say that I know I'm not the only person who has kind of come up with their spin of, I think, the same motivation that I'm working from right now. Yeah. I know that it's happening in Danbury or around the river somewhere.
Sure.
I know that it's happening in other places in Tobaccoville. I know other friends of mine that are super motivated to just, let's have a music community again. Yeah. And I'm so glad about that. And that's that's what I hope. That's what I hope I'm contributing to. So speaking of that, I guess before we wrap totally up, you have a new duo.
I do.
Fairly new duo.
I do.
So you want to tell us about it?
I do. Yeah. So Carolina Twine.
Yeah.
You can't say it without a country accent. Carolina Twine is the Stokes grown folk duo. These are the words that I came up with that sound nice to me. That Kendra Samuels and myself are part of, that we comprise. Kendra also is my partner in life and an incredible person, singer, auto body worker, car detailer, cook. Yeah. She's making her own witchy cookbook starting right now. She's just up to all kinds of cool stuff and just an amazing person. So we were singing, from the get when we got together. Music and the internet. Speaking of the internet leading to real life stuff, very much brought us together. We met in real life at a Walnut Coast service station in late 2019, and we were both otherwise involved at the time, but certainly noticed each other. And then through Instagram stayed loosely connected until one day I kind of noticed she's a little more engaged in my content. I think something's changed in her life. And so I decided to reach out, and in fact that was true. So the rest was history. But as far as music, we were singing together, kind of from day one. And that was this incredibly special thing. Man, I just love the synchronicity and the thematics, the way things come together. It's so ties in with everything we've been talking about. And so we had this really special thing, that's us. And we could have said, and this would be totally legitimate, by the way, if we might have said, I never want anybody to hear this because I want this to be so sacrosanct. I don't want anybody to have a chance to ever say anything good or bad about what we're doing. I don't want anybody's opinions of this to infiltrate how we think about what we're doing. We could have done that. And that would have been a perfectly legitimate, respectable choice. So I'm not saying it's better. But in our case, it was immediately really just people have got to hear this because it's special. And I've never said about my own solo act, people have got to hear this. I would like for them to, and I think I do some pretty respectable, worthwhile stuff sometimes. But I've never thought about any project of my personal own and been like, dear God, like this is going to touch people. Like this is going, it doesn't mean everybody's going to love it. There's always going to be cynical people. Like I used to be seeing some, couple duo and just being like, stab me in the eye with a lava lamp. I hate this, like die. There's always going to be people who look at it that way. You can't please everybody, but there's going to be people who hear it. And whether it's just because musically they hear it and they're like, wow, this is beautiful because our voices harmonize very beautifully together. It could be somebody who's completely heartbroken and given up on not just love, but life itself. And they might just hear us sing a song that they happen to have already loved, and they hear it in a new way, and it gives them like a breath for another day. It was back to that thing of like, man, this could actually help some people. And then there's also the selfish thing. And they're also, again, good selfish because it has good results of being like, man, this could actually be, not that we're focused on making it hyper marketable. We're only going to do what we want to do and play where we want to play, back to having a day job. But like this could really be kind of transformative for each of our lives, because us being together does different things for her than her being herself does. Certainly does different things for me than me being by myself does. And so it's just a really, really special thing. So yeah, Carolina Twine, I don't know when this will be released. It'll probably be after this gig, but so far it's just been small, a few little shows. We played up Golden Leaf Bistro in Danville, and we've played at Midsummer Brewing, and we've done some private stuff for, little family get-togethers and stuff, kind of for practice. And we're playing Midsummer again with Alicia B in the Now this Saturday. And it's just us doing, so far it's just covers, but we've been kicking around ideas. Just today she was sharing with me this really beautiful new thing that she's working on. And so we're writing, it's just, we've found that we can have both. It can be this special, we're not live streaming when we're like singing on the porch and being lovey-dovey. You don't have to share everything. You share what you want to share. And so for us, what we want to share is whatever we want to share online, but then being able to go and play the places that we would like to play and share that music that is just really special. So thank you for asking.
What do you think is, I don't know. What do you like? What's your favorite shit about it? Like you kind of hinted on, you really like the harmonies that you have going on. I mean, is there anything else that just really checks the boxes?
It's the range. It's the range. Cause when people see my actual musical content, not teaching, but playing music, it's kind of like, I don't know what he does, cause like sometimes I'm like playing some old like Dio or like Rat covers because I like
I've seen you do
classic
everything.
Metal.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like singing something bluesy that I wrote. Other times I'm doing like a weird acoustic guitar instrumental thing. So it can feel very variety show. And that is hard from a marketing standpoint. That's hard. It's hard to be an everything person. But I like all kinds of music, and so does Kendra. And so when we're making music together, there's like a really broad range. Like literally when we last played, we played You Shook Me All Night Long, AC/DC, and then one of the songs we played shortly thereafter was Edelweiss from The Sound of Music. And like I get choked up thinking about it, because there's something in the way that we make music together, sing together, her influences, my influences being common enough but disparate enough that we can do it and it still sounds like, it doesn't sound like they belong in different shows. You know what I mean? So that's, she loves country music and she loves classic rock music, but she also loves musicals and Sound of Music and Phantom of the Opera and all the stuff that even though I wasn't so deeply engaged in, I'm aware of because my mom taught music at North Stokes and Sandy Ridge and Lawsonville and Francisco and Nancy Reynolds back when that existed for all those years. Like I'm aware of these things, and so I get challenged to play and sing things that I might have loved but would never have ever dreamed of doing. I would never think at a Josh Shelton show, maybe I'm going to play Moon River and sing it, but I can play it and she can sing it and it's amazing. And then that makes me go, well, maybe I should learn some Sinatra because I love it. And I would have never thought to do it before, but that's cool. So there's something about whatever it is that we do together that allows us to pull from very seemingly different directions without making it feel like a variety show. It still just feels like Carolina Twine. And that's part of the brand. Of course, it's going to be Stokes Grown Folk Duo. We're kind of, if you had to put us in like a SoundCloud marketing box, it's folk or it's country or something like that. but we're able to filter out all those different things through that kind of sound. So we might sing Edelweiss, but it's going to sound like a girl from Walnut Cove and a guy from Danbury singing Edelweiss, and it still makes sense somehow. That's the thing about it, is that somehow sonically it makes sense no matter what we're doing, and that's really awesome. It's exciting.
Well, good, man. I'm glad that you're doing that, and I hope you keep plugging away at it.
Thank you.
I guess as we wrap up, I wanted to acknowledge one other thing we talked about just before we started. Over the last few months, there's been a handful of people in our immediate music community that have left us, including Dylan V, and not to mention somebody like Fred from Earshot, a year or two ago, I guess. There's been plenty of them. Today you and I just learned that Paul Dowse died today, and I don't know. I guess I just wanted to acknowledge. I worked with Paul for like 2 years at Author in Action. He was a really sweet guy, really enthusiastic musician, and I guess I just wanted to, I don't know, just acknowledge, since we're here focused on community, focused on trying to have something that matters to our musical peers here in town. I guess I just wanted to acknowledge that we lost one of them recently.
Name it. Yeah. Honor.
Yeah. Well, Josh, thank you for coming over,
Thank you for having me.
Let's do it again, man.
Absolutely.